time for the next talk as well too. Also my talk, I've been talking about these things since the last summit as well. So it's basically almost the same talk, but we add bells and whistles, and I want to have some message to you guys as well. And other things I want to say is it's a good lead from the last talk to this, and then you can like actually apply to what you guys were just talking about in terms of your configurations, your RTC, how to make settings changes, and how this actually will benefit project like this for that, right? So the talk is about ingress controller. So what's an ingress controller? It's actually in the context of Kubernetes. So in the Kubernetes world, you have a cluster, and then you deploy your application into pods. And so when you want to expose your applications to the outside world, outside of the Kubernetes cluster, then you need the ingress controller. So what the ingress controller does is actually watch over some resource changes through the Kubernetes API and communicate it to some proxy server. In this case, it's a Apache traffic server for us. And then so it will be used, we can actually use the proxy server as a way to actually route the request to the correct pods for a particular applications for that. So almost every proxy server supports themselves as an ingress controller in Kubernetes. So you can find the Nginx ingress controller, HA proxy ingress controllers. Other more famous examples like Envoy, they have their own project called the Ambassador that's also using Envoy as an ingress controller into the Kubernetes. So in my world, all our applications are almost like move over to Kubernetes. So without using ATS as an ingress controller, this actually is putting us in a disadvantage because we'll have an extra hop. So we have to use one of this as our ingress controller, and then and to expose our actual applications to the public internet, then we'll have to use ATS. So then the request will go to ATS first, then to one of this ingress controller, then to the pods that is having the actual applications for that. So we want to skip that extra hop, and so we want to use ATS as the ingress controller. So the way that it works a little bit is, of course, we have to write the ingress controller. There's a lot of tutorials on how to do that. With the Kubernetes communities, they have like some actually tutorials and examples of how to use the Go language to write the ingress controller. So basically, you'll be listening to 3 types of objects within the Kubernetes. The ingress object, the service and deployment, and then the configurations. The service and the deployment is actually information about the pods and the applications. The config maps is actually what are the configurations for your proxy server. And the ingress is about like different routing rules for your domain and the path, etc. for that. So for us, we actually have to have a Redis service in the middle to store some of the informations. And so the ingress controller will store some of the informations in the local Redis, and the ATS are actually using a plugin to talk to the Redis service to look for those informations when it is time to decide how the routing should work, etc. for that. So one cool things that we have is, Brian actually mentioned it yesterday, that we have it in the open source already. And so you can actually go into this example, go into this URL and follow the README and follow the example to set it up. This demo that I have. And so I'm going to go into showing this. So if you follow the examples in the README, then you will have set up your own MacBook to actually have the Kubernetes cluster. The whole MacBook is just acting as one pod. And then so within the pod, you can have like, sorry, not a pod, but actual host, actual node for that. So you can actually set up multiple namespace, and you can put different pods and ingress objects into the namespace for that. And so this is a diagram of what the README example is going to set up. So we're going to go into this a little bit more. So once you finish setting up, you will see different pods of the application up and running. Of course, we also have a pod for the actually putting the ATS up for that too. So one of the things is to look at some of the ingress object, right? And so you can see, yeah. So in the ingress object, so you will most of the Kubernetes stuff are in YAML anyway. So in the ingress object, this is one of the example. I declare the fact that I want my specific domain name, and I want it to be for HTTPS, and I want it for a certain path to actually be routing to a specific service that I have. So once I have all these things set up, and then I can actually go and run it against my local host for that particular pod that I expose, and then you will see that this is running routing correctly to the specific pod for this too. So other things we can do is we can use it to actually configure ATS. For example, I can say I'm going into a config map object, and which my ingress controller is going to look into it. So I actually want to see a response header, the via response header instead. So all I have to do is actually make a change, and then I can see it again. And this time I'm starting to see, does it come up yet? Yep, I'm starting to see the VIA headers added for that. So this happened behind the scene is that the ingress controller actually listened to all the changes in the objects within the Kubernetes and communicate that to the ATS for the changes for that. So other things we have added is, for example, we have a different routing rule. This time around, it's exactly the same domain name and the path name, and then to the same service, but it is for HTTP. So you can see that if I'm going to go into a different pods, making a different curl, I'm actually getting the same example. But the example I want to show is that we can actually attach script here to say that I want to do something else. In this particular example, I'm saying that, oh, hey, it's HTTP. I don't want it to show any result. I actually want to redirect to the HTTPS version of the same URL and show the result instead. So you can actually attach Lua script right now in our example. And then this is like one of the annotations for the snippet that you attach to the ingress, and you will get executed. And so if you're going against the HTTP version of it, then you'll see I'm getting a 301 redirect instead. Okay, so that is the demo of this. So again, you can go through the exact same demo through the README files on this GitHub repository, and then play around with yourself for that. So what else is missing, right? So we are very gratefully, we have some interns joining us, and then he's actively helping us to actually add on some bells and whistles like CI/CD and monitoring. And our team is planning to actually put this into production use in some small capacities, like within the next 3 months for that too. So trying to make it better tested for that. But this is like far from over. There's so many options in the ATS that we have to make available through the ingress controller. So there's a lot more like we want to add into that that will make it more feature rich for that too. So by that, one of the most important reasons I want to make this presentation is to make sure everybody is aware of this. And if you are actually doing Kubernetes deployment and things like that, you should look into trying to use our solutions to expose the ATS as an ingress controller for your Kubernetes cluster, and then try to actually contribute to our projects to make it more better tested, not just by our company, but also by multiple other companies as well. That's all.
Cool. Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay. Doesn't sound like there's any questions.
10 minutes, right? I make it in 10 minutes. Right?
Okay. It's okay. We can go over. We always do.
Yeah. So exactly. That's the only slide that is important is make sure you're aware that we have it open source, and try to take a look and contribute if you can. And that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.